Great. Well, just to know, for those of you who don't know, my name is Michael. I'm one of the guys on staff here. And just to know, we are starting January. We're going to start with a month of prayer, which I'm not going to, and we're actually going to do like a mini 4-week preaching series on different aspects of prayer as well. And I think if you, honestly, probably even just a number of years ago, if you told me, or that that's something what we're doing, I would have been distraught. I would have thought, it's so boring. I can't stand it. Just to be 100% honest with you, it's probably only really been the last probably number of years I've probably just realised that actually the importance of prayer. It's foundational for everything of the Christian life. It's the birthing place of all things. It's how we know God. It's how we bring about so much change in our life. And we see it particularly modelled in the life of Jesus as well. So we're going to, over the next couple of weeks, going to be looking at different aspects of prayer. We're going to be looking at presence, power, persistence and promises. Okay? We've done very well, kept them all begin with the same letter, which makes it easier to understand. So we're going to be tackling each one of those on a Sunday morning. And then during the week, we've wanted to set some things up as well. So we had our first one on Wednesday night, which is here. We just cleared a lot of the chairs out the way. And it was kind of really prayer and worship, but it's a sense of just really enjoying being in the presence of God. So those are going to be on Wednesday evenings from 7:45 through till about 9 o'clock. That's here. So if I can really encourage you, if you would say, I don't know what it is to just enjoy being with God, I'd say you need to come along on a Wednesday. Because we'll see in a moment, if you haven't learnt that, prayer will become almost impossible and a very difficult thing to enter into. And then Sunday evenings, it's going to be a bit more of like what Jesus asked us to do, which is like to ask, to seek, to knock, almost that sense of a bit more sort of like petition, bringing things before him. And that's going to be here again at the building from 6 till 7:30. So different timings, but there's 2 evening things throughout the week. So what we're also asking people to do is on a Wednesday is to commit to fasting as well, for those of you who feel you're in a position to do that. And I think with fasting, you want it to be sacrificial, but manageable, okay? So, and then what we're going to do is on the Wednesday nights, we're going to break our fast of just having water throughout the day by taking communion together on the Wednesday evening as well. So that's some of the stuff we've got going on. But as you read through the Gospels, you cannot escape how central prayer is to Jesus' life. And one of the things that really challenges me, Jesus says that a servant is not greater than his master. And as I was looking at that this week, I thought, it's so true. I thought, actually, you can't expect to have the life of Jesus if you're not willing to commit to the lifestyle that Jesus had. We cannot assume that somehow Jesus achieved something by spending so much time in prayer, but we've found a different methodology which is going to enable us to achieve it. No, there is no servant which is greater than his master. And almost every single page you flick through, as you look through the life of Jesus, you see him in one sense or another committing himself to prayer at all different stages of his life. So if you think, even from the point of public ministry, after his baptism, the first thing he did was to withdraw for 40 days to pray and to fast. And you think right at the very end of his life, just before his arrest and his trial and his crucifixion, where did you find him? You find him there with his disciples, calling them to pray with him in Gethsemane. So you see at the start, you see it at the end, and then you see it all through the middle of his life as well. There's many, many times where Jesus is constantly praying. He prays when he hears the news that his cousin, John the Baptist, has been beheaded. The first thing he does, he says, he removed himself to a place of solitude. And Jesus then had a big decision to make when he'd had a crowd that started following him, and he knew it was time to choose 12 people. Well, he didn't just say, well, maybe I need to think about diversity, or maybe I need to think about a mixture of this and that, or they're pretty loud and outspoken. No, what Jesus committed to was a whole entire night of prayer to be able to come down and confidently say, these are the 12 that the Father has revealed to be my disciples in this season. So see, every single aspect of Jesus' life was birthed in prayer, and it's criminal for us to think it would be any different for us. Okay? So we're going to be reading from, it's going to come up probably not just yet, in a moment, but we're going to be reading from Mark 1. And just to give a bit of a backdrop really to this moment, this is almost really like beginning of Mark 1. It's like a 24-hour window into the life into Jesus' life. And it's just carnage, absolute carnage. I think sometimes we have this perception of Jesus sort of floating around, perching himself on a rock, things very politely, people coming and going, eating grapes. And you think, the reality is, as you read about Jesus' life, it was absolute carnage. It was uncivilized. It was full of power and authority, confusion. People misunderstood him. Some people were desperate to follow him. Other people hated him. And you get this snapshot here at the beginning of Mark 1. And that's what we're going to be reading together, okay? So just building up to this point before the verses come up on the screen. Jesus, he started the morning by the lake. He's been with his disciples. He's in Capernaum. He's found his way now into the synagogue where he's been teaching. But not just teaching, we see real authority as he casts out a demon. And he says, and then from that moment, that's where we're going to pick up the story in verse 29. So Mark 1, starting at verse 29. So I think what we'll do is we'll read the whole bit of text, and then maybe we'll just stop at different times throughout it, okay? Great. So, and immediately, this is a word you'll see regularly if you read the book of Mark, really quick snapshots of Jesus' life, constantly going from one place to another. So, and immediately he left the synagogue, so that's where he's just been, and cast out a demon. And he entered the house of Simon, so that's his disciple, Peter, and his brother Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with a fever, and immediately they told him about her. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and the fever left her, and she began to serve them. So just quickly, we just see there again, Jesus, his teaching comes with authority. Okay, so he's just gone in. He's not just providing a sense of pastoral care, which is important, and they're there, to Simon's mother-in-law, but he's brought in his real sense of authority in his teaching that she's been healed. And it says, and she began to serve him. And I think this is we'll get onto the prayer in a moment. There's just a couple of things here I don't want to miss. I think, honestly, if you say that you struggle to be servant-hearted, the key is to understand the gospel in a greater way. Because I think here, where she encountered the grace and mercy of Jesus and his power, her natural response, it says immediately she just began to serve. There was something about she was willing to give herself to a situation because she's realized how much of Jesus has been given to her in that moment. And that evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick and oppressed by demons. Okay, so just take note of the time there. That's at sundown. So just think in your mind now, it's about 6 p.m. in the evening, okay, roughly. And so they brought to him all who were sick or oppressed by demons, and the whole city was gathered together at the door. Okay, so roughly about 1,500 people. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Jesus' life was not about one or two people conveniently being brought to him while he lay back on a rock. Okay, you imagine being somewhere in Guernsey and 1,500 people are demanding something from you, and they know that there's not the same medical care then as there is now. They know that they have children who, unless they get to this man who is a healer, families potentially going to have children who will die. It is carnage. To have 1,500 people, and within that group of 1,500, probably hundreds of people who are ill, all trying to get to Jesus, absolute carnage. And it says, and he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. And what authority that Jesus carries in these moments. Incredible authority that he carries. And I think this is one of the areas that, particularly for me during this time of prayer and fasting for the church, is actually I've taken a look at my own life and I say I am moving, I'm not even scratching the surface in moving in the authority that Jesus has said that his followers can move in. I am not even scratching it. I hear stories like this and I think this is a million miles away from the life that I live. And you think, what did Jesus say to his followers? He said, "Greater works will you do than what I have done." He said, "Look at the works that I have done. This should almost be your floor. Greater works you will do than what I have done." And it's absolutely incredible that that's the promise that he gives to us. And yet I know from my own life that falls way, way short of that. And so I don't get condemned about it, but I do get very excited that there's a possibility for me to step into. That's one of the things for me personally I want to be really praying about in this season. And then this next bit says, and rising very early in the morning, okay, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him, and they found him and said to him, everyone is looking for you. And he said to them, let us go on to the next towns, that I may preach there also, for that is why I came out. And he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. And just again, I just want to make note there of the timings. What time did we say that all these people came to Jesus's, they came to him? What time was it? Sundown, so about 6 p.m. But it says that he rose while it was still dark, very early in the morning. So it doesn't tell us exactly how long Jesus was ministering for into the night. But I'm guessing for a whole city of 1,500 people, where there are people, there are problems, okay? That's a lot of problems. And it says all those who were demon-possessed, who were sick, who were ill, they were brought to him. So you can only imagine that it's probably very, very, very late into the night that Jesus has been ministering. But then it says that he got up while it was still dark. You've got to remember, there were no alarm clocks back then. It wasn't like the sunlight has woken Jesus up. Something within Jesus enabled him to wake up while after maybe 3, 4, 5 hours sleep tops. Something caused him to wake up, and I think it's two things as we look at the life of Jesus. Firstly, it is knowing that there is a need to be with his Father in prayer. If he's to really live the life that he knows he needs to live to usher in this kingdom, he needs to be with the Father. But honestly, I think something that actually goes beyond the need, I think, is a joy. Is a joy to be with his Father. Because I think discipline can only take someone so far. We're in January, which is usually the time where people who own gyms notice their membership level goes through the roof because people need to shake off everything they've ate and drank over the Christmas period. And usually what they find is that in the January period, people are driven by discipline. But what they also notice is by the end of January, moving into February, the discipline is wearing off. And many of those people who signed up soon either don't turn up or they cancel their memberships. But for the people who maintain going to the gym, they discover a joy, actually, that becomes part of their routine. Actually, I am now worse off if I don't go, and I enjoy going. And that's what I said. I think if we do not discover the joy of what it is for being before God and being with him, then I think discipline will only ever take us so far in a lifestyle of praying before him. And I think I would want to just, before we move on, I want to just stay in this moment. I want you to be really honest internally and ask yourself the question, do you enjoy being with God alone? We do corporate things as well, but honestly, ask yourself that question, do you enjoy being alone with God? Because here the language used really is that Jesus has almost slipped away to this moment. And we slip away to the things that we enjoy. So our two children is, almost as soon as the last spoonful's in their mouth of dinner, the fork's down on the table and they want to slip away to something they enjoy. They don't slip away and beg to load the dishwasher. One, because they're too young and incapable. But mainly they don't slip away to that because there's no joy found in that place. They slip away to the things they enjoy. So really the question for us is, do you ever find yourself where you say you want to slip away from sleep or the busyness of being with people or social events, whatever it is, to be with Jesus? Because I think if the answer is no, then our prayer life will definitely be limited if we don't learn to enjoy the presence of God. And you look at this with the disciples, I wonder if sometimes we get what it is to pray slightly wrong. I wonder if sometimes we think prayer is sort of taking a list of hundreds and hundreds of things before God and we just reel them all off, amen at the end, and we crack on with the day. But if you look at Jesus' life with his disciples, what he modeled for God to be really, it was a sense of actually come and be with me. Just start, first of all, relationally, to be with him. So John 3, Jesus says to his disciples, he says, come and be with me in the countryside. Just come and be with me. Enjoy that time. And then if you think of when Jesus goes on in John 15, he gives a teaching where he says actually, you know, I am the vine, you are the branches. And the language he says, he doesn't say strive and work hard, he says remain. The branch has to remain in the vine if it wants to produce fruit. And again, if you just think, actually, what does a branch look like? It's just there. It's with the trunk in the middle, and out of that place is where divine life and everything flows from it and fruit is produced. It's a sense of just learning to be with God more than anything else. And how crazy the language is that God comes to his creation. In John 13, it speaks of his disciple John, who leant his head back on Jesus' chest. And he rested there. And I think Jesus, when he went to go and be with his Father, he was going to this place of what it was to be with God, was just to enjoy being with him. And I wonder, what did Jesus find in that place? Because he guarded it. It was the thing. If you looked at Jesus' life and you said what was the thing that he guarded more than anything and would not let anyone come near and touch it, it was his time with the Father in prayer. There's other times where he's going off to see a crowd and he gets pulled this way, says, okay, great, yeah, I'm going to spend some time with you. You never sit, but actually prayer was always the thing. He made sure that it happened time and time and time again. And I wonder, what did he find in that place? Because the disciples must have known how special it was for Jesus, because it's the only thing that they asked him specifically how to do. What's from recorded, you don't hear the disciples say to Jesus, how do you raise the dead? How do you cast out demons? You don't actually hear them. That's not recorded. What's recorded is, Jesus, will you teach us to pray? Because I think they found something so marvelous and wonderful and inspiring in looking at Jesus' life that they said, actually, that's what we want. We want that. We want that because we see how central it is. And that's why, as you see the birth of the early church in Acts 6, the church is growing, things are getting really busy, and they're getting pulled left, right, and center. And they say, we have to find people to help us because we cannot forsake our first calling, which is to the word and to prayer. Because they knew that if they just got dragged into busyness without actually forgiving themselves to being in prayer, they knew everything would go wrong. And they knew that because they'd seen Jesus model it. And I think Jesus obviously found something in that place that was so special that he would turn away from thousands in crowds of sick people to say, this must remain the most important thing. And it's why as a church we want to give ourselves to a degree to prayer in this first month. And just some of the things, I think there's probably a sense of peace, perspective, and power. There's many, many other things, but just as I was praying, those were some of the things. I think, do you know how troubling it would have been to have encountered potentially hundreds and hundreds of people who are sick, knocking on death's door? The trouble that could bring to someone, and just to sleep and wake up and maybe not go to his Father. He knows that maybe he would start the next day in that place of maybe anxiety, or, couldn't recover from what he saw the day before, but brought about a sense of peace. We'll move on to how it brings about perspective and power as well in a moment. And I want to invite all of us to play a part in this season, especially for those of us maybe feel, I'm not really a prayer. And I tell you, there's still much, it's very difficult for me. I'm not a natural kind of, we have to, in our household, we try and exercise the discipline still with the joy that it takes place in our house. But we were here on Wednesday night, and Phil Baldock brought a great word, just very simple. But he just said, I feel like this month is going to be a month where actually all people are to expect that they will be hearing from God. And they're to be writing them down, and they're to be sharing it. And the place to hear from him is by being with him. And I don't think we're in a season where actually we're going to rely on one or two people to carry the church through into the next season. Because actually, as you read the language of the disciples in the early church, it says they all devoted themselves to prayer and to being of one accord. It wasn't that they sat back and they just watched the small group. No, it lists like the women, the apostles, there's some others listed as well. I think Jesus' siblings. There's this sense actually they all played their part in this, and we can't get away from that. So just verse 36, he says, everyone is looking for you. They search for him, and everyone is looking for you. And I just think that sense there, it doesn't say explicitly, so I won't stay here for a long time, but there seems to be that sense of like, do you not realize that people are in need of your time? Do you not realize that everyone is looking for you? You are famous in this place. People need you. There are sick people. Everyone is looking for you. And I think that is a pressure that not to the same degree of Jesus, but in different ways, we'll all find pressures on our time to be needed for work or for people or family, friends, whatever it is. We have to be a people where sometimes we have to be sought out. We have to be searched. And I wonder actually, could you think of a time in your life where maybe it would take people to come and search for you because you've gone off to be with God? I think that for how regular it was with Jesus is way too rare for me. It's very, very important. And then this bit here, and then he said to them, let us go on to the next towns that I may preach there also, for that is why I came out. Now, I just think here, that verse, that is, I think, Jesus found perspective through being with his Father. He found perspective, he found guidance, and I think that is the thing that the Rock Community Church, for the season we're in a transitional period, that is the thing that we need. We need God to say, this is the next thing for you, this is what it looks like, these are the people to be involved. And I think Jesus needed that, but he found it being with his Father. And for us, like I say, for a church, we cannot think we're greater than the Master. Actually, if that's what Jesus did to find out, have perspective for what was next, and we must too also commit ourselves to that. Because I think, what do you think the temptation there probably, which seemed like a good idea, was that you've just had 1,500 people turn up at your door. Okay, imagine that was here, right? Imagine we have 1,500 people turn up at this building. And we see hundreds of them healed. We see demons cast out. We see people, pray for people who have illnesses for their entire life, healed in a moment. And we know that there's still a pressing in of more people maybe wanting to be healed. More people from that same group saying, can you teach us about who you are? There's probably massive pressures. It would seem totally right in that moment to say, we're going to camp down here for a few days. There's so many people. This is where we need to stay. But Jesus doesn't do that. He actually says the right thing to do in that moment is to leave those 1,500 people. I mean, if something like that happened here, we would plant it all over the news, everything. Imagine that, encountering that many people and seeing that much fruit in a moment. But he found perspective that morning while it was still dark, while everyone else was still asleep. And therefore I will wake up and join in that day tomorrow. That day wasn't going to come because Jesus was on the move because he'd been with his Father. And this is also where we as individuals have to be really careful about the lives we lead. That actually, do we just go through life living by morality? Do we go through life just seeing what seems the right promotion or the right next thing? Or that this seems like it would be the right thing? Or do we go through life as individuals and as a church where we say we've spent time with the Father, he has spoken, there is perspective, and this is the next thing for us? That's what it is to be prophetic people. And that's what it was for Jesus and the life he lived as well. And some of these verses are very, very challenging. These are out of Proverbs. So Proverbs 14:12. It says that there is a way that seems right to man. Does anyone know how it finishes? But it leads unto death. So it's saying there is a way, it seems right. I think everyone would have said that. To see the disciples there saying, everyone is looking for you. This seems right. But because he'd been in prayer, he knew that what was maybe just seemed right to man, that would have led to death because it would have taken Jesus off his mission to keep going. Or then you've got Proverbs 3, 5-6. Trust in the Lord with with everything you have. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. To be with him, to trust him, to learn, to lean on him. We have to be a people who spend time with God. And there's no way of getting around it as well. In the kingdom, it is sacrifice that leads to life. Jesus had to sacrifice mornings. He had to sacrifice evenings. He had to sacrifice going entire nights in prayer, because he knew that in the kingdom he was bringing in, sacrifice is what leads to life. Denial is what brings to being given something. And it's really important that we go on a journey to live this, that this is the type of life that we live. Otherwise, we become, honestly, without this, of actually being a people who spend time with God and walk with him, we just become a very moral group of people. But we are so much more than that when we spend time with him. It's his desire that we spend time with him. And really, that's the big challenge for us to go away after today and into this month, just to learn to start spending time with him. And for every single person in this room, it will be completely different. And it's important that you go on that journey of discovering, what does it look like for you? Some people in here might love reading. And actually something for you that stirs you is to go away on your own and open up the Bible. Some of you might love music and you think it's time for headphones on and drown out the noise of everything else and just to be with God. Some of you might be dreamers and God speaks to you and you have ideas and you want to have a pen and paper in your hand. You have to find out what works well for you. But the biggest thing is learning to be with him. There is the promise that God gives, which is, is the Great Commission. He says, surely I will be with you all the way to the end of the age. Surely I will be with you. But I think there's a difference between him just being with us and him really being with us. And that's why I see, you see John there. He puts his head on Jesus' chest. There was something about, we're really together in this moment. And I used this analogy last night as I was talking with my wife, Rihanna. I was just thinking about this morning. If you think like when you're on an aeroplane, you can literally be arm to arm touching someone, either a short flight to England, half an hour, or a long flight, 12 hours. You can literally, but yet you can have absolutely no care or awareness or anything for who that person is. You may not even look at them, talk to them, despite for that long, you're literally sitting right next to them. And then maybe with a partner or something like that is date night. You're sitting on the sofa, exact same setting. Your arm is there. You're just sitting next to her watching a film. But the difference is the affection of your heart is turned to lean in towards that person that's next to you. And I think that's what it is to be with God. It's not just to reel off prayers, although that is really powerful, to ask, to seek, to knock. And there's many promises in that as well. But we have to, first of all, be people who spend time with him and just feel the affection of your heart turn to being aware that he is there with you, he's speaking, he's guiding. Okay, so I want everyone here, just to, before we wrap up, just to close your eyes. And I want you just to ask yourself the question. And just say, and God will speak to you. He says, I'm a good shepherd. The sheep will hear my voice. He says, just ask the question, what does it look like for me to spend time with you this week? Just ask him that. And it's probably the first thing or so that comes to your mind. Asking that question, what does it look like for me to spend time with you this week? Can I ask all of us to act upon what you feel God's just spoken to you about? Okay? Can I ask all of us to act on that? Because really, I listened to sermons on prayer for years. But I never prayed, really. Never really prayed. In which point they were pretty pointless, really. But when you actually pray and put it into action, that's when you start to see things change around you. So I'm going to ask you just to act on that this week. Maybe get along here on Wednesday night, Sunday night, this evening as well. And just give yourself this month to say, actually, I want to start stepping into the lifestyle of Jesus so that I can have the life of Jesus. Yeah? I'm just going to pray for us, and maybe if we could stand, the band could come back up as well, and I will, I'll pray. Great. Jesus, would you help all of us here this morning by your Spirit? Would you send the Spirit afresh now, that we do not become a people who live following you through gritted teeth, but we become a people who discover the joy and the privilege and the freedom you bring. But so much of that is birthed out of being with you. And I think it is the thing that our enemy, the devil, will try and squash more than anything else. Just in that sense now, I'd never, ever, ever hear the enemy tell me to turn off a TV or a screen or to stop being social. But how many things get in the way when I want to go and give myself to a time of prayer? Jesus, would we be fighters of faith, that we push through that silly voice that tells us it is a waste of time? Would we be a people who become more and more like you, who usher in your kingdom in our lives, in our families, in Guernsey and beyond? And would you help us to trust that actually the future of the Rock is birthed from a place of your people in prayer before you? Would we not just live by faith and say, oh, it is what it is, but would we be a people who learn to get before you and trust that it is in that place everything is birthed? Would we discover the joy of your presence to the point it becomes a thing we cannot live without, which is so evident in your life? Help us, we ask, in Jesus' name. Amen.